A very important idea that you're going to hear in the news and politics and business is about percent increase and decrease when we want to know how things are changing. So we need to talk about how to find the percent change. And this is going to be the little setup we use anytime we're trying to decide how much did that item change, that variable change that we're talking about here. So if we want the percent change, we're going to take what is the actual change divided by the start. And then we'll turn that into a percent. So let's pretend that your bank account started with $150. Okay? And you went from $150 to $225. You went from 150 to 225. So what's the percent change? If we want to know the percent change, we're going to take what is the change divided by the start. So what is the change from 150 to 225? Well, it looks like we added $75, which is wonderful. Divided by, what did we start with? Well, we started with 150. So to get your percent change, we find what is the change. We went $75 divided by where did we start? What if your bank account goes from 150 to $50? So we lose some money. So first ask yourself, what's our change? Looks like we went down $100. So my change is going down 100 divided by the start, which is still 150 here. Now we need to turn that into a decimal and then into a percent. Divide into negative 0.67. Now I need that decimal as a percent, so I'm going to multiply by 100 and get 67%. And since we were going down, guys, that's a 67% decrease. So your bank account saw a 67% decrease when it dropped from 150 to $50. To be able to take these percent increases and decreases and turn them into a nice sentence, like a conclusion. Like, what if your car monthly payment went from $218 to $433? What's the percent increase, and how can we make that conclusion in a good sentence? So if we want the percent increase, the percent change, we first need to know if your car payment went from $218 to $433, what is that change? Well, if you subtract $433 from $218, we get $215. That's the change. From where I started to where I ended up, we went up $215. We're going to divide that by the start of 218. And that's where we started. That division is going to get me 0.986. Now we need to turn that into a percent, which is out of 100. So if I multiply that by 100, I end up getting 98.6% increase. So let's make a good sentence. And there are a couple different options here, because we saw a 98.6% increase if that is how our monthly payments increased. So we can say, if your payment went from 218 to 433, that represents a 98.6% increase. And if you notice, guys, a 100% increase is literally double. And since that 215 was almost the same as the original, that's why it's like our price almost doubled. If your payment went from 218 to 433, that represents a 98.6% increase, which is pretty nuts. The way you could turn this into a solid sentence is maybe this was the payment from good credit and this was your payment from fair credit. So you could say, if your credit goes from good to fair, your monthly payment increases by 98.6%. So you could tell me a little bit more about the situation. If you know where those numbers came from, like, oh, that's good credit versus fair credit, tell us about that. If your credit goes from good to fair, your monthly payment increases by 98.6%. All right, what about this? So what if your total interest paid goes from $1,286 to $756? And maybe this is when we go from a 60-month loan to a 36-month loan, okay? So if we want to know the percent change in your total interest, how much did we go down here? Well, if you subtract these two numbers, we see that we went down by 530, and that is the change. The change from where we started to where we are is negative 530, and I just subtracted those two numbers. And now I need to divide that by where did we start? I started at 1,286. So I'm going to take my change divided by the start, and I get negative 0.412. Now we need to make sure we turn this into a percent, which means times 100. And we end up getting negative 41.2%, a percent decrease. So now let's turn that into some good conclusions that you could put in your car PowerPoint. So you could say, when you switch from a 60-month loan to a 36-month loan, assuming that's where you got your interest numbers from. So when you switch from a 60-month loan to a 36-month loan, your total interest paid decreases by 41.2%. That's one way you can conclude this. If that was where you got your interest numbers from, 60 month and 36, then you can say, oh, well, when you go from 60 months to 36, the total interest paid decreases by 41.2.